Okay, in the last video, we talked about why an outcomes-based approach to education should be considered when designing blended or online courses and learning experiences for any level of learner. In this video, we'll dive a little deeper into 4 key principles for outcomes-based education and end by offering you a practical way to start designing for this approach. So the first principle of outcomes-based education is clarity of focus. So once you've developed clear, measurable, and achievable learning outcomes that cover the desired skills and knowledge development that you intend your learners to achieve, then every decision and communication then on can be focused on how to achieve those outcomes. This really helps you to reduce the clutter and bloat from your learning experience and helps learners to see the relevance of everything that's being done. The second principle is designing down. For this principle, I employ a backwards design approach, which means that rather than thinking about the content to be covered during the session or course, I instead, as mentioned, focus on the intended learning outcomes that have been developed. Then I think about the types of evidence that learners could show for me to be confident that they've achieved those outcomes. This evidence could be in the form of formative or summative assessments, for example. Only when these 2 pieces are in place, I would then start thinking about the content and activities that would support the learner to achieve the evidence requirements and therefore show that they have met the learning outcomes. So as an example, I might have a lower order thinking outcome that states that the learner should be able to identify XYZ by the end of the session. My evidence for this may be a multiple choice questionnaire, and therefore my content to support this could be a short instructional video. Or it could have a higher order outcome that requires the learner to create something or demonstrate a skill. So then I would be thinking about how I'd support and structure the learning material to allow them to do that. Maybe I'd introduce some collaborative activities to allow learners to support each other in the skill development needed before asking individuals to show evidence of it. This is where you can pull upon the plethora of active learning approaches. Principle 3 is maintaining high expectations, meaning that standards should not be reduced for any of your learners, as they must all achieve the same learning outcome. Now, they might have different paths and approaches, but the standard remains the same. How this is done, I'll cover in the next principle, but I believe this is an important point because this is where differentiation as an approach has come in for some criticism recently, as it's been argued that the approach is diluting standards and quality expectations rather than enforcing them and raising students' performance. Helping students to achieve high standards is linked very closely with the idea that successful learning promotes even more successful learning. And finally, the 4th principle for supporting outcomes-based education is by providing expanded opportunities. Now, we know that there is a wide variability of learners out there, and we learn differently and at different speeds and have different approaches to learning. So a one-size-fits-all approach supports nobody well. So when it comes to expanding opportunities for your learners, I tend to look towards the Universal Design for Learning guidelines, and I think about what opportunities I can provide to my learners to give them the support to achieve those learning outcomes without reducing the standards. Honestly, this can take a number of iterations through which you think about what's one thing that you can add each time. Opportunities can be in the form of different modalities of content, or it could be in the form of flexibility with time, deadlines, for example. It could also be in the form of amounts of guidance and facilitation you provide. This is something that you'll refine over time, and I think an important message to end on here is that any kind of learning design or course redesign should be approached as an incremental, iterative approach, in which you know where you want to go on the whole, but you don't hold yourself back due to the enormity of the task. So just ask yourself, what's one thing I could change in this delivery? In relation to outcomes-based education, obviously the first thing to think about is how you design these clear, measurable, achievable learning outcomes. To help you in this process, I've created a short e-course to step you through the process of creating learning outcomes, and I've included a reusable formula to guide your process. You can access the e-course from the link in the descriptions below. So if you got value from the video, please hit like, and I'll see you again next time.